Okay, next in the lineup are the vertical muscles, right? That there are two vertical muscles in the anterior abdominal wall. The two muscles are rectus abdominis and pyramidalis. The main muscle is rectus abdominis, whereas the pyramidalis is somewhat very small muscle, which is they lie on either side of the anterior midline and are enclosed in the tendinous sheath formed by the aponeuris of the flat muscles, right? And it is called as rectus sheath. Okay, this aponeurosis or tendons which are like sheets are called as aponeurosis. These three flat aponeurosis of the flat muscles, that is uh, external oblique, internal oblique and transverse abdominis, all these three muscles have aponeurosis, right? So those aponeurosis form a tendinous sheath in front of the abdomen called as rectus abdominis that entwine the rectus abdominis and pyramidalis muscles, right? So the basically the rectus abdominis muscle is within this tendinous sheath that is called as rectus sheath, right? Coming to the muscle proper, it is a long flat strap muscle which extends vertically upward along the linea alba from the pubic symphysis below to the costal margin above. So from pubic symphysis to costal margin, right? It widens as it ascends, right? It is more wider above the umbilicus, right? As it ascends from pubic symphysis to costal margin, thus it is wider above and narrows below. Okay, so this is the narrower part, whereas this is the wider part. Origin, it arises by two tendinous heads, right? Medial head arises from the anterior surface of the pubic symphysis. Lateral head arises from the lateral part of the pubic crest and pubic tubercle. It is inserted into the anterior thoracic wall by four fleshy slips along a horizontal line, passing laterally from xiphoid process and cutting in the order 7th, 6th, 5th costal cartilages, right? We'll see that in the atlas, right? Okay, so this is the anterior abdominal wall, right? So the muscle we are seeing is external oblique muscle. We'll hide it. Okay, so this is the rectus abdominis muscle. The muscle you are seeing is, this is the vertical muscle, right? Lateral to it is internal oblique and below it is transverse abdominis, right? So this is the rectus abdominis. Okay, it extends from xiphoid process above to the pubic symphysis below, right? Okay, this is the rectus abdominis muscle. We'll see there. Okay, you see, so this is the pubic symphysis and pubic crest. They are attached to the pubic symphysis. Okay, the two heads, right? And inserted onto the, you see, this is the 6th rib, 5th rib and 7th rib, right? Got it? Right. So that is the origin and insertion of the rectus abdominis muscle, right? You see, this is the rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, the muscle presents the tendinous intersections, right? It's called as tendinous intersections. You see, the white portions in the red one is called as tendinous intersections, right? You see, this is the tendinous intersection. This is the tendinous intersection, and this is also tendinous intersection, right? So the first at the these intersections are first at the level of tip of xiphoid process, second at the level of the umbilicus, and third midway between the above two. Sometimes the fourth intersection may present below the umbilicus. We'll see that. Okay, at the xiphoid process, at the umbilicus, and below the midway between umbilicus and xiphoid process. Let me draw. Okay, this is the midway between, this is the umbilicus, right? Below the umbilicus, and sometimes this is the fourth one, right? So because of the tendinous intersections, okay, in those individuals who exercise regularly, especially in the gymnasiums and in the runners and in the athletes, we will see the six pack, right? It is called a six pack because of the tendinous intersections. Okay, the muscle that appears as the six pack is rectus abdominis muscle. Okay, when there is fourth intersection, tendinous intersection, it is called it will be an eight pack. Each tendinous intersection passes horizontally in a zigzag manner and it is attached to the antral wall of the rectus sheath. The tendinous intersections divide the long muscle into shorter segments to provide more strength, right? The muscle is enclosed in the aponeurotic sheath derived from the three paired anterolateral flat muscles of the abdominal wall, that is rectus sheath. You see, these are the tendinous intersections. This is xiphoid process, right? This is the insertion right over there, pubic crest, right? You see more clearly, these are the tendinous intersections. This is the muscle proper. This is the linea alba, pubic crest and pubic symphysis. This is the xiphoid process, right? Fifth rib, sixth rib, seventh rib, right? You see, this is the umbilicus, tendinous intersections, right? Like this, sometimes here also. See from the side, right? It's covered by this sheath, right? Rectus sheath. See that? You see, this is the cadaveric image. You see, there are tendinous intersections 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? In this specimen, there are 4 tendinous intersections. This is the rectus abdominis muscle, right? Sorry. Coming to the next vertical muscle, pyramidalis, is rudimentary in human beings. It is a small triangular muscle lying anterior to the lower part of the rectus abdominis muscle within the rectus sheath. It has its base below in front of the pubis and its apex dilated above and medial. It's a very small muscle. I mean laterally small. It arises from the front of the body of pubis and anterior pubic ligament. Inserts into the linea alba midway between umbilicus and pubic symphysis, and it is absent in 20% of the individuals. You see, so small. This is the pyramidalis muscle, right? You'll see that. You see, that is the pyramidalis muscle in front of the rectus abdominis. This is rectus abdominis. This is pyramidalis, right? See, the such a small muscle, okay, it sometimes almost absent in 20% of the individuals. You see, such a small muscle. Coming to the rectus sheath. Rectus sheath and aponeurotic sheath enclosing the rectus abdominis muscle and pyramidalis is present on either side of the linea alba. It is derived from the aponeuris of flat muscles of the anterior abdominal wall, that is external oblique, internal oblique, and transversus abdominis. The functions of the rectus sheath includes checking the bowing of rectus abdominis during its contraction and hence increasing its efficiency and maintaining the strength of the anterior abdominal wall, right? We should know how it forms, its contents and all. The rectus sheath presents anterior and posterior walls, right? The anterior wall is complete and covers the entire extent of the muscle longitudinally from the upper end to the lower end, whereas the posterior wall is deficient above and below and hence does not cover the entire extent of the muscle longitudinally. That means anterior wall is complete whereas the posterior wall is deficient, especially below the umbilicus it is completely deficient, absent. Above it is attached to the costal margin, 7th, 8th and 9th costal cartilages, and thus muscle lies directly on the 5th, 6th, 7th costal cartilage. That means because the rectus abdominis is attached to the 7th, 8th and 9th costal cartilages, the rectus abdominis muscle lies directly on the costal cartilages, right? On the 5th, 6th and 7th costal cartilage. Below, it presents a free curved margin with concavity facing inferiorly called as arcuate line or line of Douglas, right? Where the rectus sheath ends in the inferior part between the umbilicus and pubic symphysis. It is called as arcuate line or line of Douglas, right? Below this level, muscle lies directly on the fascia transversalis. That means because there is transverse abdominis muscle below the arcuate line, so the muscle lies directly on the transversalis fascia. The anterior wall of rectus sheath is firmly adherent to the tendinous intersections of the rectus abdominis, whereas its posterior layer is free from the muscle, right? The formation above the level of the costal margin. Anterior wall is formed by the aponeuris of external oblique only, right? Posterior wall is deficient and muscle lies directly on the 5th, 6th and 7th costal cartilages, right? That is above the level of costal margin, that is above the 9th costal cartilage, right? So there is only anterior sheath, right? Anterior wall only. Between costal margin and arcuate line, right? Anterior wall is found with the fusion of aponeuris of external oblique with anterior lamina of aponeuris of internal oblique. Posterior wall is formed by the fusion of aponeuris of transverse abdominis with posterior lamina of aponeuris of internal oblique, right? You'll understand more in the next minutes to come. Below the level of arcuate line, anterior wall is found aponeuris of all three flat muscles. The aponeuris of transverse abdominis and internal oblique are fused, but the aponeuris of external oblique remains separate. Posterior wall is deficient, right? Recently, right, we have to learn that formation, but also in the recent advancements, it is found that aponeuris of all three flat muscles are bilaminar, right? Thus giving 6 lamina in all. That means bilaminar means anterior and posterior, anterior and posterior, anterior and posterior, right? Anterior and posterior, anterior and posterior, anterior and posterior. See? So this is external oblique, internal oblique, transversus abdominis, right? So all of these fuse together to form rectus abdominis, rectus sheath, which encloses rectus abdominis muscle, right? So this is called as a muscle giving two lamina, right? A muscle giving two lamina, anterior and posterior. Muscle giving two lamina, anterior and posterior, is called as bilaminar. Okay, anterior leaf, posterior leaf. They are called as anterior leaf, posterior leaf, anterior leaf, posterior leaf. Okay, remember that. We'll come to that later. The three layers form the anterior wall, three layers form the posterior wall of rectus sheath. The lamina do not terminate in the linea alba but decussate with other lamina across the midline, right? Linea alba is the decussation of the aponeuris of those three flat muscles in the region of linea alba and continues as a lamina of contralateral muscles. Contents. Okay, contents of the rectus sheath are two muscles, rectus abdominis and pyramidalis, two arteries, right? Superior epigastric and inferior epigastric arteries. We'll discuss them in detail in the next coming classes, right? When we discuss the neurovascular structures of the abdominal wall, right? Superior epigastric and inferior epigastric veins and 6 nerves, right? Terminal parts of lower 6 thoracic nerves, including lower 5 intercostal nerves and subcostal nerve. They are accompanied by terminal parts of posterior intercostal valves, right? So this is the diagrammatic representation of rectus sheath. Anterior wall, green one is rectus sheath, right? This is the posterior wall, green one is rectus sheath, right? You see, this is the arcuate line. Below the arcuate line, there is no rectus sheath in the posterior, right? See, this is the posterior wall of rectus sheath where nerves are penetrating, right? You will understand these diagrams more in the next classes. You see, this is the formation of transverse section of rectus abdominis, the upper 3/4 of the rectus sheath, right? Upper 3/4. You see, external oblique, internal oblique, and transverse abdominis, right? You see, all these fused together. So, anterior rectus sheath, that is, and posterior wall, right? There are two. Anterior and posterior walls are present there. Okay. Whereas coming to the lower 1/3 of the rectus sheath, there is no posterior rectus sheath, right? This is the anterior wall. There is no posterior wall, right? Directly transversalis fascia is there. That means there is no rectus abdominis to cover enclose the rectus abdominis, rectus sheath to enclose the rectus abdominis muscle, right? Now, observe carefully, right? The formation of rectus sheath above the umbilicus, right? The anterior rectus sheath is composed of both leaves of aponeuris of external oblique and the anterior leaf of aponeuris of internal oblique. Remember that. Both leaves of aponeuris of external oblique. You see, this is the external oblique muscle, right? See, this one is the external oblique, right? And so this is the internal oblique, blue one is the internal oblique, whereas yellow one is the transverse abdominis. See, so the external oblique has anterior lamina and posterior lamina, right? Both these laminas, two laminas participating in the anterior wall of the rectus sheath only, right? Whereas the anterior lamina and posterior lamina, right, of the internal oblique, right? You see, internal oblique is again coming to the posterior wall, right? Posterior lamina. Anterior lamina is going to the anterior wall. Posterior lamina is participating in the formation of posterior wall of the sheath. You observe these two lamina leaves of transverse abdominis fusing with the internal oblique, posterior leaf of internal oblique to form posterior wall of rectus sheath. That is given in the description, and anterior leaf of internal oblique fused together. The posterior rectus sheath composed of posterior leaf of epineus of internal oblique. That is one blue line coming, right? Posterior leaf, one blue line coming. And both leaves of epineus of transverse abdominis. That means both yellow lines, right? That is above umbilicus, and this is below umbilicus, right? Below umbilicus. The posterior rectus sheath is replaced by transversalis fascia and extraperitoneal connective tissue. You see, this is the transversalis fascia. Again, this is transverse abdominis, this is epineus of external oblique, right? You will understand more clearly the concept in this diagram. You see, the concept of bilaminar aponeurosis of oblique and transverse abdominis muscle. Note that fibers of the superficial, okay. You see, this is the rectus abdominis muscle, right? So the rectus sheath coming. You see, this is the anterior rectus sheath, right? You see, external oblique, right? External oblique is giving anterior and posterior leaves, right? You see, this is the anterior one and this is the posterior one. So both anterior and posterior one participating in the anterior formation of the anterior wall of the rectus sheath. Whereas this is the transverse abdominis, right? I will use red, transverse abdominis. Transverse abdominis muscle has anterior and posterior. You see, the posterior one, this is anterior one, this one. Forming in the formation of the posterior wall of rectus sheath. Whereas this one, right, internal oblique, right, internal oblique participating. You see, this is the anterior leaf and this one is the posterior leaf, right? You understand now clearly? Anterior leaf of the internal oblique fusing with the both leaves of external oblique, whereas posterior leaf of internal oblique fusing with the both leaves of transverse abdominis to form the posterior rectus sheath and anterior rectus sheath respectively, right? Observe this diagram for a period of time. Okay, you will be clear. Coming, see, this is the anterior layer of rectus sheath. This is the cut one, posterior layer, you see, this is the muscle, rectus abdominis. You see, this is the rectus abdominis muscle, rectus abdominis, right? We are retracting it in the dissection, okay, to expose the posterior wall of rectus sheath. This is the posterior wall of rectus sheath. It is ending here, right? You can see that, right? You can see the defect like, and it is called arcuate line, right? This one is arcuate line. This, all of this shiny part is just a loose areolar tissue. That's it, a fascia-like tissue, right? Transversalis fascia, right? Sorry. So this is the anterior rectus sheath, anterior wall completely enclosing the rectus abdominis muscle, right? This one is the anterior rectus sheath, right? And if you incise this laterally, okay, and retracting the sheath, okay. The sheath is firmly adherent at the tendinous intersections, right? Firmly adherent at the tendinous intersections, right? You see? So, if you completely retract and exposing the rectus abdominis muscle with its tendinous intersections, right? Observe that. And you see, this is the anterior wall, and this one is the posterior wall of rectus abdominis, right? Posterior wall of rectus abdominis coming to the midline to fuse together, right? Coming to the clinical anatomy of the importance of the rectus abdominis muscle, the pedicle flap of the upper part of the rectus abdominis muscle, based on the superior epigastric artery, is commonly used in the reconstructive surgery of the breast, right? And there is a condition called divarication of recti, that is separation of the rectus muscle. The separation of two rectus muscle usually occur in the elderly multiparous women with weak abdominal muscle. Remember that. In this condition, aponeurosis forming the rectus sheath become excessively stretched, right? Consequently, when the patient coughs or strains, the recti separate widely and a hernial sac containing loops of intestine protrudes forward between medial margin of the recti, right? You see, this is the divercation of rectum muscle when the sheath is excessively stretched in multiparous women, right? Hematoma of rectus sheath. Sometimes the superior and inferior epigastric arteries are unduly stretched during a severe bout of coughing, unduly stretched, or in later months of pregnancy, and ruptures if they are exposed to a blunt trauma to the anterior abdominal wall, leading to the formation of hematoma within the rectus sheath. So, when there is a severe bout of cough or in the last trimester of pregnancy, and if there is a blunt trauma to the anterior abdominal wall, then because of the both superior and inferior epigastric arteries are within the rectus abdominis muscle, rectus sheath, there will be formed a hematoma within the rectus sheath, right? And it is present as a swelling, right? A tender swelling in the anterior abdominal wall. Coming to the epigastric hernia, the linea alba above the umbilicus is wider, about 1 centimeter, and below the umbilicus is very narrow. It becomes weak in elderly multiparous women and chronically ill children. Okay, linea alba is weak. When the intra-abdominal pressure is excessively raised, a small amount of extraperitoneal fat may protrude to the upper part of linea alba and eventually may drag behind a small peritoneal sac which may contain a portion of the greater omentum, forming the epigastric hernia. So the epigastric hernia occurs in multiparous women, elderly multiparous women, and the weak child, chronically ill children, right? So this is epigastric hernia, okay, from lineal. This is lineal. Coming to the another layer in the anterior abdominal wall. Last but one layer, okay. After this layer is the peritoneum. Deep to the transverse fascia is a layer of connective tissue, the extraperitoneal fascia, which separates the transverse fascia from the peritoneum, right? Containing varying amounts of fat, this layer not only lines the abdominal cavity, but is also continuous with a similar layer lining the pelvic cavity. It is abundant on the posterior abdominal wall, remember this, especially around the kidneys, continues over the organs covered by peritoneal reflections. And as the vasculature is located in this layer, extends into the mesenteries with the blood vessels. Viscera in the extraperitoneal fascia are referred to as retroperitoneal organs or retroperitoneal viscera, right? You'll see that in the description of the specific surgical procedures, the terminology used to describe the extraperitoneal fascia is further modified. The fascia towards the anterior side of the body is described as preperitoneal fascia or properitoneal fascia, and the fascia toward the posterior side of the body has been described as retroperitoneal fascia. Right? Preperitoneal and retroperitoneal fascia. Examples of the usage of these terms would be the continuity of fat in the inguinal canal with the preperitoneal fat and transabdominal preperitoneal laparoscopic repair of an inguinal hernia. Okay, there they use the preperitoneal fat and preperitoneal laparoscopic repair. They call them. You see, so yellow layer, right? Yellow layer, and here it is represented as red one. You see, red one is very marked here, right? The fat is very excessive here. All of this is retroperitoneal fascia. This is preperitoneal fascia, right? So because you see these are the kidneys, right? So that is why the kidneys are called as retroperitoneal organs, because peritoneum, the innermost layer is peritoneum. Peritoneum coming and reflecting itself and not covering the abdomen, right? So it's called as retroperitoneal organs, right? We'll see how it is. This is the cross section, right? At the T12, T11, T12, that is below umbilicus, right? I'll show you. This is the MRI, right? This is cadaver. Cadaveric is like this. We'll see here only. You see, the selected structure is external oblique muscle, right? Both sides, this is the external oblique, whereas this one is rectus abdominis, right? Selected structure is rectus abdominis, right? And this is the rib, right? This is transverse abdominis muscle, and you see this is peritoneum, right? This is peritoneum. Selected structure is peritoneum. So between transversalis abdominis, right, and this one is peritoneum. Between this layer and this layer exists the extraperitoneal fascia, right? Okay, we'll see another transverse section, L1, L2, right? And here you can see, I will select the peritoneum. You see that is peritoneum, right? Selected structure is peritoneum in the cross section. Now the selected structure is kidney, right? Kidney. So the peritoneum is reflecting on to itself and not covering the kidney, right? So the peritoneum is covered with the extraperitoneal fascia, right? So you see, these are the kidneys. This is the MRI structure, right? This one is the kidney, right? In the MRI. So that is extraperitoneal fascia. We will discuss in detail about the peritoneum in the coming classes, right? So that is vertical muscles and rectus sheath and extraperitoneal fascia, right? If you have any doubts, let me know.